Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. Today, we are diving into something I think as adults, many of us struggle with, but we don't always talk about the idea of making and keeping friends as adults. It can feel overwhelming to to try to get out there and make new friends, but it's also very fulfilling. And it's something that we can do for ourselves if we so choose.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the reasons anybody who is reading just about anything or listening to anything knows there's a lot of talk about a loneliness epidemic. And we touched
Yeah.
on this earlier in the season. I think you and we meet so many incredible women in our work that come to our retreats, people we work with, people that we just know in our lives, like other parents of our kids, you know, friends of our kids' friends, um, who admit they don't really know how to make friends as adults. It always shocks me too, because it's like always some of the coolest people. I'm like, really interesting. And there are just amazing, accomplished women who feel stuck when it comes to building a community. Some of them have what we've referred to here, and we're not the only ones who refer to it this way, sisterhood wounds. Some people have just
Mm,
trouble trusting. Some people really believe they have no time for it.
right.
Um, and I just I think there's just a block somewhere, right? So, given the times we're in, having connections and grassroots support, I think is more important than ever. So, we wanted to talk about it now, early in the year. And
Yeah.
not to say if it's not your goal, we want it to be your goal. But I think if it's something you're thinking about or longing for, even if you're like us and you have great people in your life, but you're like working from home or you have a routine that doesn't get you around people physically enough, like it's a great reminder for us to because we can spend this time together and it really does fill my cup. Thursday is my favorite day of the week because Lisa and I get to connect and download everything, not just do this. But this conversation reminds me to, get off this recording and text a few people and make some plans. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. I've seen a lot of things out there in the interwebs, webs talking about the thing that can get us through the challenging times we're in, is connection and community. And we've already said it on so many of the episodes this year, but just that idea of like really being in a space that feels nurturing and fulfilling and resourcing. Um, so let's start with just like, why is this a challenge? I mean, I remember thinking when we moved here to LA, this sort of like, what I was 47 at the time. I was like, how do you make friends at 47? My last big group of friends that I made when Liam started school, right? I met the other moms of the other 4-year-olds, and that's how I became friends with these people. And moving out here with a sixth grader and a sophomore in high school, you just you don't hang around the schoolyard waiting at pickups and things like that. Um, this You sent me this article before we started. I thought it was so fascinating. Research from a woman named Robin Dunbar. She's an anthropologist, and there's a theory, I guess it's a theory, Dunbar's number, that suggests we can only maintain 150 stable relationships at a time, and only about 5 of those are close, intimate relationships. So I think that's fascinating because 150 sounds like a shit ton, and 5 doesn't sound like enough, like of the close ones. But I mean, I would say I probably have, and then there's more in that article, which I don't think we're necessarily going to go into, but it's like there's also layers. So there's the 5 or 10 close ones, and there's the friends, and then there's friends that like sort of acquaintances. And within that 150, there's layers there. But I thought that was a really interesting number. What do you think about that
I
number?
do too. Well, it's funny because the term friends in social media is so strange, right?
Right. Totally.
And yet there are ways that that even with my little bit of posting and your frequent bit of posting, there are ways you can really connect with people you care about. That's the only way.
Yep.
So I don't want to totally disparage that, but That's not the same thing. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're
Right.
talking about is true connection, and what's going to get you through hard times. And like if you listen to Brene Brown, she'll be like, all you need is one or two of those people.
Right.
I think somewhere in the middle of like this 150 and Brene Brown saying that it works for me, which
Mm-hmm.
is I do only need one or two or three, like Beth calls them, my friend Beth calls them unicorn friends, right? The friends that you can, no matter who you are or what mood you're in, you can, there's no like girding your loins to like come in and make an impression and be a certain way. You're just like who you are no matter what. And you're loved and accepted and lifted up when needed and appreciated when you're doing the lifting. And I do like to have, people in my life that I can be like, hey, let's get together. Let's go for a hike. Or they don't have to be the friends that lift me up and know all the shit going on in our lives. Some people,
Yep.
they don't know how to react to some of the stuff, that we sometimes go through with our harder days. And they don't need to be, and that's
Right.
okay.
Yep.
Um, so I think that it's like concentric circles.
Yes.
You've got your inner circle. A cruder way of putting this is like your A list, B list, C list. I hate that, but like there's your inner circle, there's the next layer circle, and there's like there are some people you really enjoy seeing at an event or seeing at work. That it just time or for whatever reason, it doesn't go beyond that. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't count them as friends
Agreed.
or
And
community.
to be fair, you're also that to them, right? So it's not like
Right,
you're their close friends and you think of them in the
right.
125 to 150 level, right?
No,
Like
it's exactly. It's
everybody
being
needs,
mirrored.
yes,
It's being mirrored.
100%. And then there's those theories, not theories, those phrases of like, the true friends are the ones that you don't talk to for months on end and then you get right back into it. I think that's one of the beauties of social media is that, and you and I think we've even talked about in the pod, for me, having moved twice from long-term living places. I grew up in Dayton until I was 27. I lived in Chicago for 20 years. Now we're going on 8 years here in LA. Um, I really love the connection I have on Facebook with people so that when I am back in town to visit, I don't have to rehash the last year since I've seen them, so that there is a connection piece to me there. But yeah, on Facebook, I have 13, almost 1,400 friends. I actually, when I'm talking, I delineate between it's a connection on Facebook or a friend on Facebook. I mean,
Right.
Facebook doesn't look that
Sure.
way, but there's definitely people that I am connected to that I do appreciate, and when they dip into things, or if they do or whatever, or when I see their stuff, like I love that. Um, but do I
Yeah.
actually have 13? Do I know those 1,300 people? Not most of them, no.
Yeah. I remember one of my cousins has somewhat of a high profile job. And I remember he had a really beautiful post once that was like, just because you like my post doesn't mean you know me and that
Right.
we're friends, like if you want to be, reach out. And I sometimes feel that way. It's like, I don't want you to think we're caught up because you saw something I posted. I want it, like, if we're these kind of friends, like then reach out sometimes, find
Yeah.
out what's really going on. But I haven't felt, I think that thought hasn't occurred to me in a really long time. And back to this idea that like, why is it harder for adults? It's because when you're younger, school, clubs, teams, theater, those things bring you together. As adults, those organic opportunities aren't as common.
Right.
Enter, you and I became friends at work. So
Right.
like work is a like a really great place to make lifelong friends. It's where so many of your dearest friends have come from, and mine too.
Yep.
So outside of that, if you're hearing this going, oh crap, I work alone, I work at home, or I don't like anyone I work with, then like that doesn't mean you're shit out of luck. It just means like, what are you interested in? What could be fun for you? What are ways you want to stretch anyway? You might find people like you there. There's probably things right under your nose that you're not even realize are things, communities you're part of where you can make stronger connections within,
Yeah.
so doesn't mean you don't have them. It's just we do as grown-ups have less organic opportunities. However, I do think that's an opportunity to like create new bridges, like create new, like, oh, well, I've always wanted to take a dance class. Maybe I'm open to meeting someone there.
I
It
think
does
what you
sound
just
a little bit like we're talking about dating.
but it is, but it is. And I mean, yeah, I don't think that's that far off. But I love what you just said because it's often something we talk about, which is the step back aspect of this. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, gosh, I wish I had more friends, or you're right, I have no time to make new friends, I'd love it, blah, blah, blah. That first step of taking a step back and looking at who are your 150. You don't necessarily have to write them all down. But if you can come from a place of knowing that you do have opportunities um, to cultivate a stronger relationship with some people. I actually am working with somebody right now, and she's contemplating changing jobs. And so one of the things we've been working on is her tapping into her current network of people she knows. And like I had her make a list of what are some people that work at cool jobs that you want to talk to them about. Like there may not be a position there, but again, this opportunity for connection. I look at I when I'm coaching a client around changing careers or changing jobs, and I talk about interviews. I talk about those being connections, not thinking of as so pressure, but connections. So if you had that stop and thought before I start thinking, oh my God, I need more friends, and really look at what could you up level, so to speak, in your current community, it could be a lot easier to make friends than you think it is, I guess is where I'm going with all that. It's
I want to
long-winded, but
acknowledge that I really appreciate that. And to build off that, I want to acknowledge that certain personalities, this comes easier. Let's just, certain types,
no
certain
question.
like look at my mom. I mean, she uprooted a life like what 50 years in her house and she's in a new place. And when her grandson, who has a million things going on in his life, will point out, Nana seems younger and like better than ever, like, since Papa passed, which is, 12 years ago. And he's right. And it has so much to do with the fact that, and you remember, like, and she listens, I love you, mom. Like, we were giving you grief about wanting to, like, why do you need these things? You don't, you're not gonna be having dinner parties. She's like, don't take that away from me. This is my fun. And guess what? She is having dinner parties.
That's amazing.
She's met people in her neighborhood. She's making lunches. She's celebrating fun holidays and just bringing all this joy to people and interacting, and she's busy, and my brother is just so blown away by it, and it's precious. It's that she still has so much life in her, and she's so sharp, and she didn't go out there going, I need new friends. She wanted to be near family, and it was time to
Right.
downsize. But I mean, I think she hopes she would, and she's pretty confident. She's the oldest of six. Like, she's just always kind of been a warm, open person, inviting person who's really good at hosting. But the fact that it happened so soon, and it's just, I don't know. I just think that is easier for someone like her than other people's moms who got moved, and they're like not even leaving their room at a like an adult independent living center.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they're less than in any way than my mom. It's just never been in their personality. And
Right.
so that desire has to be there, right? Like,
Yes.
we're not telling you you have to make friends if you don't have them, but if you're lonely, or if you're feeling like it would be fun to have like at least one person that agreed with you on something or like the same things as you, um, there are people for you. There are
You know,
people like you looking for like some companionship.
I agree. My dad was sort of the opposite. My dad was always sort of a loner, which then makes me think of Pee Wee Herman. I'm a loner, Marge. But it's just, he was, he had a good friend that he'd known from high school, went through college. Neil lived in the same building. Like dad had that and family. But he was also somebody that if he was out and about, he would talk to anybody, but he just didn't need a lot of friends. It just wasn't something that he desired. My mom, I think, was a little bit different. She was probably a little bit, she was somewhere between my dad and your mom. Like she wasn't dying to get out there and be super social, but it was a big reflection for us. And this again, I think goes back to the step back piece. When she passed, Amy and I were kind of blown away by how many people that she would have just thought she knew really loved her and really reflected back to Amy and I like, oh, your mom was so great and this and that, and had like these great reflections. And I remember Amy and I having this thought of like, God, I wish mom knew this. when she was alive. And I don't think it's because they didn't tell her. I think it's because she didn't accept it. So again, I think there's a step back piece of like, look around. Maybe you have more connection than you think you do. And is there any one of these, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert? I'm an extrovert and I hate going out and meet new people. I've gotten better at it over the years, but it's not my favorite thing to do. Um, if there's something stirring inside of you to try to, that you want some more connection, take a step back and look at what you already have and what can you make better or more full, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm like, also, let's just talk about the people that are already under your nose that you could,
right.
you could just make some, I don't want to say deeper efforts. I'm not suggesting anyone's shallow. I just mean make some more intentional plans.
Yeah.
Um,
You're really good at
Often
intentional plans.
I try, but I also have had the benefit, like the unexpected gifts of some time that I can't move my body the way I want to because I'm either, bedside to a seizure or, like there's just been things that have happened in my life in the past, like, I don't know, 5 to 8 years that have given me a lot of time to appreciate someone who'll go deep over text like you.
Like me.
um because sometimes I can't speak. This started like I learned how to text when my dad was in the ICU, and if I had been speaking on the phone it would have been really disturbing to the ICU psychosis he was in. So learning how to text with my brother and sister during that was life-saving because I didn't feel so alone in figuring out like, oh my gosh, how do I support him right now, like what do we do? And that came in handy, with Griffin as well.
Yeah.
So I think getting back to like why I'm intentional and how I became that way, I feel like it's become a theme that my family revisits because we've had the time and we've been on the receiving end of such genuine friendship from people who want to
Yeah.
support us, even if they didn't have time, just like the way people would convey something to us. And so I swear it's pretty often where, in fact, that conversation with Beth the other day was reminding me, like almost every time Peter and I have a deep conversation, we'll say, who are the people in your life that, you would call for this, or who are the people you like, you can just tell anything to. And so when the kids ask me that, it has allowed me to realize there's some people that I was probably taking for granted. And so I have
Mhm.
now, really tried to move them to the forefront of my time.
I love that. Um, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, I think reflecting again back on your mom and how your kids are seeing her as younger now, it does come from a place of why friendships and community is so important. I had read this research before as well, and you put it in here. Loneliness is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's wild.
Whether or not that's true, I mean, we've seen this a few times, and so they say research says, but there's
Right.
so much bunk out there at this
True.
present moment. So,
Based on
but
what
it's
are
a great
facts.
conversation starter. Even
Yeah.
like I do believe it because I do think there is so much science dedicated right now in some of the
Hmm.
biggest institutions to the loneliness, the happiness, the psychology of depression and anxiety and all that stuff. I mean, the psychiatry and the neuropsychology around that stuff. So I do believe it. And we do know that loneliness is really bad for people's health physically,
Yeah.
like that it leads, just like any sort of negativity, loop. Same with loneliness, anything that's kind of feeling bleak and disconnected, because humans require connection.
Yeah.
um, so again, like for the people who feel like they live in a remote place or work remotely, or they're really maybe working through some fears and paranoias about germs or whatever, it doesn't mean
Hmm.
that they are destined to loneliness. That is the good parts of the online connectivity.
Yeah.
However, I do think it's a surprising part, and we've said it here before, it's a surprising part of these years when our kids are older and need us less, how prevalent and surprising loneliness has been to people. I think we pictured like, woo, we get to be kids again when our kids are gone. And
Yeah.
the world, the economy, and like all people are working more, things feel bleaker. And it is, I mean, let's just not also forget that connection is the antidote to all the division that's being programmed into the way we live as well right
Yeah.
now. And so, of course, people feel lonely because we've all been played
Yes.
and divided.
And
And,
divided. Yep.
so I think it is bad for us. And the more and more we connect, the better we feel. And the more hopeful we feel, the more active we get. That's just healthier.
We've talked about our retreats before, and one of the reasons that this keeps coming up for us, the talking about community, is because we have bared witness to women who did not know each other, now friends after the fact of one of our retreats. I mean, and again, going back as far as you ran retreats in your business in the past. We had worked at retreats for the Health Coach Institute. We saw, even at the Health Coach Institute, in the way you train when you had a partner, another student to go through learnings with, like those people oftentimes became lifelong friends. Our retreats absolutely do that. We've had two now, and we're about to have our third in Chandler, Arizona at the end of March. So there's still time to sign up. Where it's fun because we have some repeat participants, but these new women that are coming in, they just get loved up from the minute they walk in the door. I've actually had a couple of conversations, one with a person who is coming to Chandler, and one with a person who is thinking about it. And in both of their instances, I've said, I think that's going to be the game changer for you, is to be in a room full of women who want to lift you up, who want to be your friend, who want to support you and hold you accountable to your highest dreams for yourself as you create this next best chapter. And I know for the one that signed up, I think that's the reason she signed up. I was like, this will be life changing for you. Um, and it's absolutely something I just value that we have created, and I'm so excited about the
Right.
one in March.
Well, I agree. I would like to, like, there's two people I'm thinking about specifically, but there's way more than that we know, because some of the repeat people, and one includes our dear friend, have talked about how they do not have a great history with friendships with other women, and this has been a really healing experience for them to
Yeah.
be in this kind of environment, which we are also saying you can create where you are. A retreat is a great way to kick that off.
Yeah.
One of them um, is beautifully open about her struggle right now to find people she can trust, and is really just kind of putting it out there, like, I'm done with this. I'm done with reaching out to people and having them totally reject me and making them feel small. Like I'm she's like really leaning towards the healing that she's experienced with you and then with our retreats, right? And then another one who really did try when she moved and was trying to, create friendships while she was parenting a young one. And like doesn't totally have the time for it and can't force it. And so she loves coming to our retreats for that. She loves knowing that. And we had a conversation recently about, like, we know that you're a cool person and that you're open to a cool, person coming into your life, but you're not going to work hard to find it right now because you don't have the time. But that'll happen when it happens, right?
Right.
So there's no promising it happens, but there's a really great way of knowing who you are and, like, who you want to spend time with and calling that in. And so it is great to at least have things on the calendar where you're going to be around people who, and in fact, this is probably a great time to remember to share that quote of Amy Poehler's, which is, find a group of people who challenge and inspire you, spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life. I think that's part of, like, what we've seen, we've witnessed. These are each incredible people in their individual lives, and they're inspiring each other and staying connected in the little group chats and
Yeah.
planning to come to the next retreat. So, yeah.
Well, and I think, and that's one of the reasons, again, I mean, we're very intentional about why we're wanting to have two a year, so that and why we tell when the next retreat is at the current retreat, so that, you know, come hell or high water, in 6 months, you have another opportunity to connect with some more amazing women,
Yeah.
I'm going to say the link to sign up for the retreat, which is March 25th to 26th,
28th.
20,
28th through the 30th.
thank you. Oh my God. It's like, it's so buried in my brain. So it's March 28th through the 30th. It's in Chandler, Arizona. It's about half full, as of this taping. So, the link to sign up or to look into it more is in the show notes. It's the best chapter yet, plot twist retreat. And plot twist getaway, I guess is what we're calling it. And I think it's going to drop at a moment in time in 2025 that is just going to feel. I know for me, I can say it right now. For me, it is the one thing on my calendar that I'm just like I cannot wait. It's like I'm going through this desert, and the retreat is like this little oasis that I keep grabbing for, and it's not quite here yet. It's not quite here yet. I cannot wait to be in this room full of women that will just feel like a big fucking hug.
Big fucking hug.
Big fucking hug.
maybe BGA, BFH. That'll be our next
Yeah, there you go.
retreat title. Just kidding. Big fucking hug. Let's talk about like what's worked for us.
Yeah.
We obviously have already shared that and it's no small thing that we became such close friends with people we barely were ever in the same room with. That's
Yeah.
probably speaks to the nature of our work.
Mhm.
And also, I mean, what I was going to say before, I haven't always in my life, and I can forgive myself for some of it because I was young, I was in college, but I haven't always been the kind of person who was like acquaintances with somebody and, or like connected to somebody. And like when something happened in that person's life where they needed a ton of support, like I showed up. But when I have, those have become really good friends in both directions, where
Yeah.
we were somehow part of the same community. We were in the same carpool for our kids, or in the same neighborhood, and one of us had a crisis, and the way the other one showed up, it really created a friendship. That is how ours happened to start, right?
Yeah.
is you had a loss, and then a group of us just immediately responded to it, and
With
that was the
wine.
beginning. With wine, to be
That's a
specific,
very important piece of this story.
with 12 wines.
12 wines, exactly.
and some cute pictures of us saying cheers.
Yeah,
And
it was cute.
so there was that, and that has happened in person for both of us. I
Yeah.
think specifically about someone who was one of those people I was talking about earlier, like, oh, they're cool, but we never really have time. And they stayed that way for like a decade until things shifted. Our kids were in high school, became better friends. She went through a divorce, and now, we try to see each other at least once a month. Just like time shifted, needs shifted, and things opened up. So in both, like that to me is an opportunity, but I'm not like waiting for someone to have a crisis, or I'm not waiting to have a crisis. I'm just saying those things have happened organically. What I think works for me is like really stepping back and thinking about what do I want more of in my life, and who inspires me that way, that I would like more time around, and not who do I owe my time to? Who do I feel bad about? That's an
Mm,
interesting thing. A lot of times when I say, be more intentional, I'm not telling you to mine for guilt. That might be a
mm,
clue for you to like for what you need more of, right? I'm not saying don't see someone you feel guilty about not seeing, but if it's always because I should, that's an invitation to reevaluate that, right? So I'm not talking about shoulds. I'm talking about, I may have overlooked this person, but I love this person so much, and I want to like shift that. I may have overlooked her because she's so great and doesn't ask for anything, but really does feed me. And because we've been in the business of responding to people who, like really make an effort, um, you got to ask yourself, like, is that the person for me? So I think for me, it's like step back. Who would I like more time with? Where do I have time? And how can I kind of sync these things? None of us have a
mm,
ton of time, between
right.
work and being a caregiver and family and the things that I'm already doing. I got to like make sure my time for myself is prioritized. But
Yep.
some of that self time is better with like somebody that I want to share time with. So if I was brand new, if I moved somewhere, what would I do? I think I would start with like the things that matter most to me. You know, is there a community organization that I can support where I might meet people? Is there like a class I've always wanted to take, and now that I'm new somewhere and I don't have a ton of obligations I could focus on, maybe I'll meet someone at a cooking class or a dance class, or, you know, something having to do with music. I don't know, but that's kind of where I would start. But the first is, yeah, look right under your nose.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's absolutely the first place. Look right under your nose. You know, as I said, I have moved twice. And in both instances, and I know this was true for you as well when you moved to Portland, like Darren and I knew out of the gate, and we're very fortunate when we moved from Dayton to Chicago and Chicago to LA, we already had people there that we knew. And so that helped immensely because we could fold in with them and then meet their friends. Of course, moving to Chicago, I had a job, and you're right, most of my very dear friends have come out of work for sure. Um, and then when I moved here, again, and interestingly, in both instances, the friends that were already there were kind of more Darren's friends than mine. And that was true here as well. Um, I think I lucked out because some of my friends now have come out of Charlotte being in high school. Theater just is a special community, you know, and theater moms are special people. So we all kind of that's how those friends came about. But you know, if you do work from home, if you do run your own business, I am just a huge fan of networking. And again, I say that kind of a little bit hand in cheek because I'm not a huge fan of networking. Like that's not easy to do to go walk into a room full of people you assume already know each other. But with the networking group that I became part of in 2020, essentially, like some of my dearest friends in LA are absolutely out of that networking group. And I would not have not known them any other way. And quite frankly, mostly we met on Zoom because I really joined in 2020. But we've made as obviously the pandemic lifted, made opportunities to go out and have more one-on-one connection. So again, if you work from home, if you work from home and you don't need to network, find some community things. Again, that same client, like she started playing volleyball again. She's loving it. It's totally fulfilling her life, and she's meeting new people, which again could lead to job opportunities. Um, if you're an entrepreneur, network, get out there. Not everybody has to be your people. You know, maybe you're not going to find five or six close friends like I have out of my networking, but if you meet one or two and then you meet their friends, you know, it's like again, I'm aging myself, but the Breck, I told one person and then she told one person and then she told, you know, like your circle of influence can grow pretty quickly in that respect.
You have amazing friends from your networking, and it
I
is
do.
just the greatest example. And I have made some really good friends in through networks in Portland that I wouldn't have met otherwise. I do think anything I mean, I think it kind of mimics, you know, the like for some people this sounds like a perfectly fine thing to do. For other people, it sounds like a nightmare, but it kind of mimics what I imagine rush feels like for people. Like you don't necessarily have to commit to anything, but if you get out there and you start to like just be in the practice of asking people about themselves, being really curious, but also holding space, like grounded in who you are so that people
Yeah.
get a sense of who you are, not trying to be something.
Yep.
That's exhausting and that doesn't create the connections that you're probably craving. But really just go out and be yourself. And what's the worst that can happen? Like, you know, you meet one person who's pretty interesting that you might follow up with that's worth it.
Yep.
If there's an opportunity to do it, do it. Don't just do it for no reason. There's got to be easier things than that. And but I do think I do think there are more opportunities to meet people than we realize. I
Yes.
also really, really, really believe that it's very feels very hard to meet people too. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to act like it is easy. I mean, I don't even, you know, it's been a while. I've been 25 years in one place and 23 years in this house. So I say all this with with a grain of salt. Um, I do love meeting new people though. I think it's just really fun. That whole idea that you haven't even met all the people that are just gonna, you know, love you is such a great reminder that there are still conversations that you're gonna have that are gonna lead to deeper connections. And the more vulnerable we are, or the more direct we are, the more we're going to quickly weed out people who aren't worth our time.
Yep. Yep. And this is, one could argue, oh, it's you're just surrounding yourself in your bubble. But again, I just think we're in a place in history right now where having like-minded, supportive, accountable people is just really important and life-giving, and not everybody has to talk about it's politics, religion, sex. Like, you don't have to talk about that stuff and still find deep connection. Um, but it's just
Yeah.
community and friendships are everything. They're the only thing in some ways, they're priceless.
Yeah. I just want to add to like just really quick, this popped in my head while you were talking, which is there's this somewhat indirect way of creating deeper connections that I've witnessed and seen so many times. And I've also experienced, which is find someone to exercise with or find someone to carpool with.
Yep.
Those are two very low pressure ways to just have the actual time for deep connections to blossom. Obviously, choose people you might want to have a deeper friendship with. But even if not, if the least you get from that is a pal to do those things, it's really lovely.
I mean, this is taking it to an extreme, but I think that that's really how Darren and I got together, because we had known each other since we were juniors in high school, but we didn't go to the same high school. So our circle of influence was just the Dayton music scene. And so I'd see him out, but it wasn't like we were buddies. And then our freshman year, we went to Miami of Middletown. So it was a commuter school. And so we just happened to have very similar schedules. So we drove back and forth to most of our days together. And that's really how we became friends and realized how much we had in common and blah, blah, blah. And again, we're recording this early, but tomorrow we will have been together for 37 years. So
Wow.
that's what a carpool can do for you.
Yeah. Carpooling and exercising
Yep.
with a
Yep.
pal. That's such a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. But
Um,
I think in overall though, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, yes, I would like to have some deeper connections, we go back to our go-to, which is start small. This isn't about going out and throwing a party, going to 12 networking events, joining 25 clubs. Like, what would light you up? What would feel good to you to cultivate in 2025?
I mean, and don't be afraid to like shift and just go, you know what? I'm not ready for that. I'm gonna like be my own best friend right now. And
Right.
I guarantee you that's gonna attract more like-minded people anyway. But really truly, you get to just you get to decide. You don't get to like you don't have to just wait for someone to come along and pick you as a friend. You get to decide, you know what I would really like? It would be really fun to have like notice what you notice, right? Like I
Mm,
noticed there's this really cute, I think I may have taken you there, this really great Italian market. You go there for like little things. It's not, it's not like your budget market, but it's really nice. And there's a wine bar in the back, and I would see people just gathering there. Like, and so I created that a happy hour with some of the we don't do it as often as we started doing it, but it's also not summer. But just a way to like end the workday with some people once in a while that our kids, grew up together at the same school and we think very highly of each other and we're all doing interesting different things. And it's just such a great way to connect. And so it's like I noticed people doing that and I created that. And what I love about it is it's a text group now and they do it whether I'm there or not. Like I felt like I was the one kind of making it happen. And now it just sort of happens and people know to just drop in there. And it's
love that.
local and it's in our quadrant of the city, but other people come across town for it. And I just think like that came out of me going, I never see those people. And I would like to have something like that that's super low key, that's non-committal. So it happened.
And I guess another option, and I know we have Zoom fatigue to some extent still, but like I think about keeping our work meeting going after there was a layoff at our company. And I just thought, I don't want to lose these people. We don't work together. We don't live in the same city. We were all virtual. And so I reached out to all the other coaches and was like, hey, do you want to keep meeting once a month? And everybody, and we, have anywhere from 3 to 8 people joining on any given month. And they're in Canada and Spain and Colorado and Florida and Indiana. And it's such an hour that is so life-giving. Um, I have the condo I lived in Chicago, we still have text threads there, or we've done Zooms, that type of, like, take advantage of easy peasy stuff like grabbing a bunch of friends that haven't seen each other and doing a happy hour over Zoom. That's so 2020, but it can be a way to keep connection with people you maybe haven't seen in a while. And it might sound like exhausting on the front end of it, but it's pretty fun and pretty life-giving for sure.
It
And
is.
and then I
Mm,
guess the last piece is patience. Start small and then have patience, because I know I've met with people that I think, ooh, they're my people. And then we never meet up again. Sometimes they're not, it's meant to be a one-off thing. And sometimes friendships take a minute to grow,
I know. That's true.
you know?
Ours didn't.
No, it didn't. It didn't. All right, you ready for the song?
12 wines helps. Yes, ready for the
Yes,
song.
12 wines do help. That's true. Okay, so you picked That's What Friends Are For, and I picked something else, and we're going with mine. God bless Dionne Warwick, but that song was just overplayed in the 80s. I can't with
It
this
really
song.
was. It really was. And it was a lazy choice on my part. I just liked knowing you can always count on me is a good sentiment, but it
True.
really was 10 minutes ago that I decided I didn't hate it anymore. So,
That's hilarious. 10 minutes ago. Well, I picked Everybody's Coming to My House from David Byrne. This
better.
song makes me so happy. We were so lucky to see American Utopia in New York in 2021 or whatever year we went. It was just super fun. So the lyrics were right out of the gate. I wish I was a camera. I wish I was a postcard. I welcome you to my house. You didn't have to go far. A house and a garden. There are plants and trees. Make a closer inspection. If you get down on your knees. Now everybody's coming to my house, and I'm never going to be alone. And everybody's coming to my house, and they're never going to go back home. Now the
Oh,
funny story about that, though, just FYI, the last line of this song is, "And I'm never going to go back home." And he told the story in American Utopia of, like, he was talking about how, kids, this is kind of from a kid's perspective, like, oh my God, everybody's coming to my house and they're going to stay here forever and ever and ever. And as you get to be an adult, you're kind of like, okay, everybody's coming over. And I for sure have done that. Like, I love to throw a party, but I almost always have a moment right before, like a day or two before I throw a party, that I think, why the fuck did I do this? So it speaks to both that, like, energy of a child who just wants to be friends with everybody. And as you get older, you do realize that 150, that five, whatever it might be, is enough friends. You don't need to be friends with everybody. So it hits both of those, both levels of that.
yeah, I love that. And I also, we did not touch on this totally, completely. So I really want to go back to the fact that at our age, I think what we've learned, and we're trying to help our kids learn this all the time, and your kids are pretty old souls, especially Liam. We probably already knew this, but just because of friendship isn't as close as it once was doesn't mean it wasn't important on your path. Like
Yes.
relationships, whether you're dating or good friends, um, there doesn't mean they're bad when they end. Some just have a like a life to them, and your
Hmm.
path. You've learned what you're going to learn, and you've taught what you're going to teach, and you've given what you're going to give, and receive what you're going to receive. Right. So
Yeah.
the it's okay if you feel like you're letting some friendships go to start new ones.
Yes. Love
It's
that.
it really that you're going to go hear Mel Robbins speak, and she has that beautiful idea that is going around all the time on the interwebs, which is just let them philosophy. Like
Mm,
if some people are, growing apart from you, or they're not making as much of an effort, let
yeah.
them fade away from your life. Like with just all the kinds of love in the world, let them float away in their rafts. And if you're meant to bump back into each other in this big pool of life, you will, but you
Yep.
don't have to be tied to anybody, just let them
Yeah.
drift.
I love that. Yeah. Well, if this lit you up a little bit, put a little fire under the idea of wanting to make some new friends or see what you can cultivate within the community you already have, Or if you're thinking, gosh, I was just having this conversation with a girlfriend, this would be a great time to share that. We are loving getting responses and comments on Spotify. So keep doing that. Thank you to everybody that is putting comments there. I see everyone as they come through. I try to respond to them as quickly as possible. And then, of course, we always have our socials that you can comment on as well. Friends are important. And we will all have exactly the amount of friends we're supposed to have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to see you next time. Thanks for
Bye,
listening.
everyone.
Bye.